Welcome, welcome, welcome to the last panel of today. Obviously, the best because we got an amazing, fun panel scheduled for you all talking about the coolest topic ever. This panel is called Animal Crossing New Horizons for Political Organizing, and we'll be discussing the intersections of gaming culture and politics and how these things intersect. And well, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. But I want to leave it up I'm going to introduce myself real quickly. My name's Tim. I'm the moderator. I'm also with Gain Power, and I'm also been moderating a lot of the tech behind the scenes for many of these panels. I'm going to kick it over to Mai. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi all, I'm Mai. I am a PhD student in the Department of Political Science at UC Riverside. I'm also a writer, and then on my off time, I like to play and then sometimes complain about or rave about games. Currently, I am very into playing World of Warcraft, League of Legends, Civ, a couple other things, although I can't say I'm very proficient at any of these. Ian?
Thank you, Mai. Hi, everyone. Ian Camus, I use he, him pronouns. I'm an organizer, civic engagement organizer at the Filipino Worker Center. We're a grassroots organization in historic Filipino town, Los Angeles. Um, outside of organizing work, I'm also a big gamer. Have been gaming since forever. Big console guy. Love Nintendo. Classic RPGs, right? Both new and old. So I'll play pretty much anything. Passing on to Logan.
Hi, folks. Logan Smith. I'm a field representative with the California State Legislature, which means a little bit of everything from government services provider to public policy specialist. Lifetime gamer, grew up playing games in the lap of my game developer dad back in the old days, the Wild West of gaming. Currently working my way through the new Halo title and getting back into League of Legends.
League of Legends, very cool. It's kind of interesting. We're all kind of like dating ourselves. Like, oh, what was the first game we all learned? So, I grew up on Sega Genesis, Nintendo 64. But yeah, I'm playing a lot of Dota. That's my drug of choice. But I recently got an Xbox over Thanksgiving break, so maybe I'll see you on Halo. So yes, we're gonna be we're gonna be talking about some of the reasons why we're here. So Mai, we've been talking about gaming on the side as friends for a while. Why did you think of this topic to begin with? Like, why are we here today?
Okay, so I have generally followed like gaming news and all that for a while. I also, like I mentioned earlier, I am a PhD student in political science, and so more recently I've been thinking kind of about just organically because that's just how my brain works about how these two things intersect. And oftentimes when I play video games or when I hear about news, my sort of reactions to these things are to view them through like the lens of social sciences, right? Just because of my background. And so, especially right now, when I hear about things like unionizing efforts and organizing efforts in the gaming industry, or even, we just watched the Kyle Rittenhouse trial and, people's concerns about video games and contributing to violence potentially, and views on particular policy areas and whatnot. I think it's a really good time to be talking about this, and I think maybe some of the reasons why we don't are often attributed to like this idea that a lot of people don't play video games, which is just not true. So many Americans play video games nowadays. It's not a niche like type of media anymore, right? And because it's media and it's also and it's also platforms for socialization and politicization, right? And so there's just a lot to be talked about in this area when it comes to these intersections and in terms of specifically like political science, and then also in the realm of like political organizing and electoral politics. There's a lot to be done there, that a lot of untapped potential that I think we could really get into.
Yeah, and we're gonna have a good discussion about it because I don't think we can talk about the alt-right without talking about Gamergate and the toxic bro culture that perpetuates its. Ian, you want to go a little bit about some of the reasons you're thinking about this right now? I want to just give you a chance to talk about, what we talked about yesterday.
Yeah, definitely agree with the points that Mai made about like how gaming is a lot more mainstream now, right? And how there really is an opportunity to for an untapped, really untapped market for organizing, right? And we've already seen examples of this, right? Like there have been some electeds who have tried to use the mediums of like Twitch and others to like kind of be more relevant to our generation, right? Because we all, I think all of us here, right, grew up with some form of gaming. We shared a little bit about our personal history, and also like what are we doing to um, to counter that dominant narrative in gaming culture that tends to lean right. um, uh, what can we do to make it more more inclusive, more representative of like who gamers actually are, and not just a specific subset of folks, right? So yeah, those are the kind of things I'm really interested in too, right? And like and how can we have games that also reflect who we are and reflect our values as well.
Very, very good, very good. Logan, you want to just go into a little bit about some of the reasons you're here?
Yeah, I think Maya and Ian really get at the heart of it. A lot of folks maybe discount the impact of the role of gaming in culture or in political discussions. But, they'll say games aren't real. It's a hobby you do on the side. And like, yeah, like it might be a fictional, interactive thing you do on your computer or your Xbox, but we all accept as a given that the impact art can have on people can motivate them to things or engage them in things or change how they interact with one another. And games, fundamentally, you're either interacting directly with the art or the art is facilitating a way that you are interacting, with, other people. And I think we talked about this a little bit last night behind the scenes, but that's a huge amount of territory where people are having discussions or having interactions or spending hours every day or every week that we have ceded to the right. And there are, I think we'll probably, I imagine, get into this a little bit later, like class components to that, racial components to that have allowed these things to, feed into things like Gamergate. And I just think that's a really urgent, thing for us to engage with and talk about.
Can we go? For those who don't know, can we do a little description of what Gamergate is? Anyone here want to take a shot at it? Logan, you want to go into it? Do you know about it?
I don't want to get it wrong here.
Okay.
The short version is kind of a harassment campaign. I might know the year.
Yes.
The year it went down better than me.
14.
2014, a online harassment campaign that was conducted, directed particularly at I believe there was originally, I think it was Brianna Wu was the original victim. Then very broadly ballooned out to target just dozens and dozens of women, whether it was in gaming journalism, gaming development. I know a number of prominent LGBT members of the Dragon Age development team, faced a lot of backlash and targeting, driven primarily by at the time what was kind of a proto alt-right, born out of places like 4chan, parts of subreddit, these kind of lawless frontiers of the internet.
So I'll go a little bit more detailed into that, and I think this is what's really important if you're on the left or progressive organizing. You didn't really watch this space in the early mid 2010s. People like Milo Yiannopoulos, is that how you say his name? He rose to fame as the editor of one of the technology journalists of Breitbart magazine. Was it magazine? Breitbart, whatever, right? And they were going on this like anti-feminist, anti-social justice, like anti like PC culture bent about like people like Brianna Wu and other women developers, and so it's like a culture war that they like took the flag first and really paved the way for like the edgelord, meme lord discussions, the trolling culture that you see on social media, on streaming culture and podcast culture, and kind of I think kind of was the seeds of the modern alt-right, the right where Trump was getting popular. So there was a lot of synergy for people to definitely go after feminists and lefties and people who are fighting for diversity and really do nuance narratives in gaming culture. Did you remember Brianna Wu actually ran for office herself? as a reaction to this as well. But it's an ongoing battle, and we still see a lot of toxicity in the gaming industry, both in the esports world, in the developer world itself, and in the online culture of obviously Reddit, Twitch, making it hard for people to feel like they engage in the culture. Have you seen, like, what are your experiences with toxicity and like that anti-feminist like rhetoric that sometimes you see in these spaces? Where does it come out? Do you see
I
it in
mean,
League of Legends? Where do you see it? Yeah.
I think this has been less of an issue in recent years. I think because some of these populations have kind of just like matured with the game. But like League of Legends is notorious, right, for having like a not the best player base. And I know some of the folks at Riot Games have been working on kind of rooting out some of the ways that the game communications might enable like that kind of behavior. But generally speaking, I think a lot of it, as we've talked about, is kind of this like what people tend to perceive as like this broy culture. But even then, I think like Ian pointed out, this is kind of like a particular subsection of gamers, right? And I think because they're so vocal, it often means that they take the spotlight, right? And they're like the stereotype of what a gamer is, even though that's not the case, right? That's increasingly not the case. And I've been kind of pleasantly surprised to see, for example, when it comes to the Activision Blizzard situation with the workers they're organizing to address workplace harassment and end abuse issues, that like players and content creators have rallied around the workers there and generally seem to be really supportive, for example, right? Or like that there are more spaces now for people, for gamers that don't fit that particular stereotype, or that even like people like League of Legends professional players, or people who make sort of like more like people who make other content, like I think of like Animal Crossing or like other like generally single. I mean, I guess Animal Crossing now is a multiplayer game in a lot of ways, but like single player games, right? People who make content based off that, where they're more willing to speak up about issues, and even if not like in a very direct way, that at least they don't engage in the same kind of behavior that we expect. Like the raging like 13-year-old Xbox player sitting in his mom's basement type of person, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The average age of the American gamer is how much? Remember? 35. That's the average age of the gamer, right? According to that the article we found. But I wanted to spend some time talking about Activism and Blizzard. This has been a really hot topic lately. For those who don't know, they're a very famous game company. Blizzard was a company that developed World of Warcraft, Diablo, StarCraft. Activism did Call of Duty, and they merged a few years ago and becoming this big tech gaming conglomerate. And they came under recent fire in the last few months for all these issues of sexual harassment and abuse within the staff from the top of the leadership. And the state of California is actually suing them, correct? I don't think I've seen that before. And right now there is a there's a labor rights movement growing here. Do you want to get into it? Yeah, go ahead. I think you can speak more to the labor stuff than I do because I'm not on the.
I mean, Logan, do you have I know Logan's also been following this. Logan, you're muted.
I very much want to hear Mai's take on this situation, but I think this is a very important moment for us to watch in terms of both economic justice inside the gaming industry, but also in terms of the political literacy of kind of the gaming community more broadly. Because when you look at almost every major gaming media outlet right now, whether you're talking Kotaku, Polygon, Rock Paper Shotgun, places like that, there's a huge amount of front page coverage on all of these places devoted to spotlighting what's going down at Activision right now. Even today, where we know corporate came back with the literally textbook from every anti-unionization drive ever letter urging employees, the union is going to take your rights away. You're going to sign this document, and they're going to have control. And it's this very us versus them mentality of the union is not you. The union is someone else. It's an other. It's a hostile entity, and we see that, I think, a lot reflected in the toxicity in aspects of these communities as well. Because when you see these kind of alt-right or very conservative, white identity movements, white nationalists, white superiority movements, other, the whole rainbow of problematic or downright, violent groups that we witness in some of these spaces. It's that same us versus them mentality, and it's frustrating, I think, because it's very much an opportunity where, again, we can bring people together, and we're seeing that with this ABK scenario right now, where gamers are rallying around the employees, they're rallying around their shared love of these games they've grown up on.
Yeah, and it's definitely been like the line that I think a lot of people have drawn is, I mean, I think it's been a lot of, you should care about this just as like a person, but even if you don't, even if you're not really into like labor rights or that kind of thing, or you're like not, I guess depending on I guess even if you're not super into that, or like you're not really super political, so I've seen a lot of people be like, okay, well, generally speaking, game developers, artists, their working conditions influence the quality of the game, right? And so if you think that games should improve in a particular way, if you want responsiveness to improve, right, all these things, then you should probably care about these workers' conditions, right? Even if you, for some reason, can't bring yourself to care otherwise. So that's been also interesting to see, right? This this talking point about just the fact that working conditions tend to help, right, with productivity, which I think is also a line that is often used by just sort of more broadly, right, in general political discussion. For those who may be a little bit less like I said, attuned to labor, who are just trying to figure it out from a more like economical kind of rational perspective. And Tim just dropped this link in the chat for those who are looking to support them. So the ABK workers, there's a strike fund currently being organized for them. And then also there is they have a Twitter account. It's at a better ABK. So if you want to go check them out, that would be awesome. And I believe that Haymarket Books also did a panel yesterday or the day before with some of the folks who are organizing in the gaming industry, with CWA and a couple others who are actually like engaged directly in this work. So if you want to listen to them chat about some of the work that they're doing, that is also available for you.
Yeah, Ian, I want to talk about you're a labor organizer in that way too. How do you see working rights and labor rights intersect with esports and like the way that the gaming industry is conducting itself right now?
Yeah, I think I think in the gaming industry, right, we not only in Activision Blizzard, right, but in other companies too, right? There's the crunch is such a normal part of like game development culture, right? I mean, we see these articles of like people working like 80 to 100 hours a week just to like churn out like games, and that's just simply it's to Mai's point, right? That these conditions I don't think they really facilitate productivity or or a good product. It just burns people out, right? And then I know it's also typical for like developers to take like months off after the release of their game, right after it goes gold and it's released to the public, and then you take a couple months off and then come back and start on the next one, right? I mean, I think because it's become so like commodified, and game development has like just ballooned in terms of like budget, right? That it's created these types of conditions, and I think that's why it's so important for workers and developers to really unionize as well, because then that way they can negotiate the terms of their work, and like, and it's in all of our favorite games. Like I recently played Red Dead Redemption 2, which is honestly one of my favorite open world games. So beautiful, so immersive, incredible story, everything. You could say everything about it. But the developers at Rockstar put in what 100 hours per week, right? At some point to
Yeah.
crunch before the release date,
Yeah.
and there were, and that was while it wasn't as as public as the Activision Blizzard, because that's a whole different scenario, right? It's not an uncommon thing in the industry, and so like
Yeah.
yeah,
I was
so
talking to a friend that works at in the gaming industry at
mhm,
Twitch. He used to work at EA, and he was telling me that like yeah, there's this kind of similar to like the venture capital tech and startup boom and bust world. There's a lot of investment, a lot of pressure to create fast, to fail fast, to keep innovating, just burn people out because you hit the golden like the mother lode with a big game that's going to be your profit for like years and years to come. But then it's kind of like a microcosm of like hypercapitalism at its worst because there's no real regard for people's sustainability, no real intention towards like community or the broader geopolitics even. We're seeing some foreign policy engaged in this stuff. I know we had a good discussion about Call of Duty and like how foreign policy and even like American politics are wrapped up into these narratives. Does anyone want to take a shot at that? Because I know
Yeah, I want to
Logan
touch
or
real quick before we
yeah,
jump away from this last line here is when we talked about. I know you
yes,
mentioned Ian. You mentioned Red Dead Redemption, and I think that's a really good example here when we're talking about those. And you brought up the crunch. That game is a stunning work of beauty. It is it undoubtedly art, right? It is undoubtedly a piece of art concocted by hundreds, if not thousands, of people that thematically deals with themes of human exploitation and labor, and we see that happen in the production of that title. And that's something that we see time and time again in the industry, especially the last couple of years, whether it's Anthem at EA, where developers were worked down to the bone to produce a game that ultimately failed tremendously after a massive investment, to I think probably the biggest story of the last couple of years, Cyberpunk 2077, a game that is thematically embodies the spirit of kind of rebellion or pushing back against overbearing capitalism to an absurd level. Also coming out with a lot of bad press related to the state of the game and the conditions the workers were put in, to produce that product. And it relies very much on that idea that, like, you're lucky to be here. You're lucky to work on this thing that's your passion or your hobby. And we can just take and take and take from you, to get there.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah.
Ian,
If,
you had a point about the. Mhm.
yeah, and thank you, Logan, for just a quick point. I think like it might not be easy for us to see if we're not in the game dev world, right? Because our interaction is with the product, with the game, right? But I think like in some ways, uh, capitalism and its hyper focus on like profit and capital, right, reaches us eventually too, right? Because for all of us here, I think we remember a time when games didn't have DLC, right? Didn't have microtransactions, right? Where like I paid $60 for a game, but now I have to pay like an extra like $5 a month to get like these coins so I can buy like a new hat or like a new like outfit for my character. Like what the hell is
Cosmetics.
this? Like
What's the EA called? Pride and accomplishment, right?
pride and accomplishment, right?
Right.
They got my Star Wars, man. I can't believe that. Like I'm still
I
upset
know.
about that.
And it all started with horse
Battlefront
armor.
2.
Right. And like
Yeah.
and like unfortunately, right, the reality is, right, for triple A gaming, if the only intention is to make profit, right, and to obviously that's what they're going to do because that's how it operates, right? I think we begin to see like games just become like these money churning machines, which I don't want to because it's hard. I want, like you were saying, like, I want to consume. I want to enjoy it for what it is, rather than like think about, oh, how much do I need
Yeah.
to spend? How much do I need to save so I can buy this new
Yeah.
thing for my character, which has no real effect in the game. It just makes me look cool, right? Why can't I just earn
And
that
there's
by like doing things in the game?
and
Things like that.
I wanted to bring back to the concept of socialization because we know that especially for younger people, there is like a feeling a desire to fit in with their peers, a need to feel accepted, to have the latest skins in Fortnite, to show up to the squad and feel like you're. But if for many people, gaming is their first interaction with currency, real currency. We've heard so many stories of like kids pulling their parents' wallets, getting that credit card, buying points. It's quasi gambling in some ways. I know the European Union has tried to regulate this stuff to a much higher degree than the United States has, because they know that it's like a slippery slope towards getting people hooked at a very early age, and this is a very problematic behavior for young people to get into. We didn't have this 20 years ago, 15 years ago, right? Pokemon, we didn't have to pay DLC for that, right? Did we? Were there any deals? No. So yeah.
No, that's a really good point when you touch on the psychology of it, because I was joking, but it started with the infamous horse armor content for Elder Scrolls Oblivion back in the late 2000s, and that was $3.99, and then it became a map pack for Call of Duty, and that was $30. And then comes along as games, as you mentioned, increasingly become this platform for socialization. There's that option for the business team to start parting out and piecemealing things. And, when you talk about game design, games should make you feel something or experience something or derive something from that. They've gotten really good at pressing that dopamine button in your brain. They're really, really good at it. Games have always done that, whether it was chess, 1,000 years ago, or Animal Crossing today. They're really good at pressing that dopamine button, but they've also become increasingly good at monetizing that, and it's inevitably kind of this like ticking time bomb of exploitation on this audience for these games. And we see that in terms of gaming addiction, where people are spending, especially I think in mobile games, folks end up spending tens of thousands of dollars. And there's no oversight, there's no regulation, there's nothing to prevent that from, just taking people for all they have.
Yeah, I put my screen share on to show this picture. Do you know this picture? Have you seen this? Do you know what I'm looking at?
Yep, the App Store.
Yeah, like mobile developers have figured out there's like a certain aesthetic, a certain look that attracts like casual gamers, and it's like, and all these games kind of go on the same model of like, oh, it's free, but if you pay a little extra, we can make it a little easier for you to get up the rankings of your whatever game you're playing. And so it's extremely predatory in a way. It's kind of funny in a way, but it's also very predatory on people who aren't aware of how much money they could be spending. It adds up. And so I'm definitely very concerned about this. And I also don't want to play Diablo on my phone. I want to play it on my desktop. Yeah. So
I think the socialization bit is like I think it's often mischaracterized in a way. There was the deal with the Kyle Rittenhouse trial and sort of pinning his behavior potentially on.
Can you explain that for people who
didn't know?
Yeah,
okay. So during the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, the prosecutor was attempting to essentially say that Kyle Rittenhouse playing violent video games was contributing to his violent behavior. And I think a lot of people sort of hyper focus on that one topic of conversation around games is kind of what is one of the things that has contributed to our inability almost to more productively tap into digital and gaming spaces, right, as places for organizing, because we see this as a singular problem, as the singular sole focus, instead of issues of the sort of more nuanced or more subtle issues of long-term socialization, right? These issues of potential the slippery slope into gambling, right? Things like that, or over time some of these spaces becoming more conducive to sort of the alt-right discourse, right? Things like that, and the real and the really, I guess, maybe almost sad thing about this is that when you look at all the research on video games and violent behavior, it's actually really mixed at best. And there's some evidence that it does contribute to violent behavior, like violent video games contribute to violent behavior under certain conditions. There's some real findings, right? And it's quite mixed in terms of that one specific like topic, but that we're like so latched on as a society because of moral panic, right? When really, if we could just broaden the scope a little bit, right? Thinking about like policy attitudes, right? Like Call of Duty, and thinking about like the Activision Blizzard's partnerships with the U.S. Army, right? Things like that, right? The actual content of video games outside of just like the violence, right? Outside of like the physical violence, right? All
Yeah.
the political content, whether it's explicit or not, right? We think of like Animal Crossing and the notorious raccoon dog landlord, which or like in Pokemon, there's you can kind of see, at least I guess not, maybe not in the games so much, but I guess kind of in the games too. You have like gangs, right? You have like the way that healthcare works in Pokemon and all of that, right? So yeah, I think really like if we could just like expand our scope of like what we can identify as like particular issues or particular opportunities, right? Where people are learning about topics of like economics, right? Politics in games. As outside of this like really narrow-minded focus on do shooters cause people to like guns.
I wanted to we've talked a lot about some of the negative effects of the negative dynamics in gaming culture, and I wanted to pivot towards some more positive potential opportunities. And what Mai said reminded me of like the famous debut of AOC's Twitch stream last year when she played Among Us with a bunch of streamers. And I remember watching that, with the iwillvote.com in the background. And I remember she was like having this throwaway comment about like, man, it's a freaking future. We're all these like little alien people, spacemen running around the ship. How come we're still using fossil fuels in the future? And I'm like, yeah, that's real. And I also remember like in a downtime between games, she was interacting with some of the other streamers. Some of them were foreigners from like I think Canada or the UK or Europe or something, and they're like, oh yeah, healthcare is like free here. Like what the hell? And it was just like, interesting to hear like people casually just talk about the differences between policy between like across borders, and I was just like really like, huh. And the way I loved it was AEC is not like beating you on the head like, oh, vote for this thing or do this thing or that. She's just like being herself on stream and just having fun and just having casual conversation. And I thought that was like a beautiful like moment of like, wow, I wish we could see more stuff like this. And I wanted to see if you thought if there's similar moments in the zeitgeist where you've seen like potential for like progressive narratives to really come forward, whether it's the streaming culture, the gaming narratives themselves, the diversity within the gaming art games. I know we have so much to go into, but Ian, I want to start with you and see if you've got something to hope for.
Yeah, I think definitely we're making like small steps in really making gaming more accessible, right? I think about just like the representation in gaming. I think for me personally, one of my watershed moments was when I watch. I think just to see a game like that, to have people from all different countries and nationalities and backgrounds like come together, right? That was my first foray into like hero shooters and all that. So I was like, oh my god, like a multiplayer shooter can be more than just Call of Duty, and like in a World War II setting, it can be something futuristic, something hopeful, right? So that's the game. That's still my favorite multiplayer game to date. I play it with my partner and all of our friends. We get together, we have a good time, right? So there is potential for that. I think representation is one of the first steps that we can take, so that it also invites other people in. Because like, I know it's cliche to say, but like if you have characters that look like you, believe in, have the same values as you, right? We become attached to them, right? And it's good that it's evolving, and getting much better for that. And also I think like the indie scene, right? Like I'm sure everyone here has like experiences with indie games. They offer some of the most innovative, like progressive and frankly like transformative experiences, I'm sure. And maybe others can share like if there is a game that's particularly spoken to them that might not be as popular as like Call of Duty or like League of Legends, for example.
Yeah, one of my someone I've been following, someone I have like mutual followers with on Twitter and have been for a really, really long time. Um, they make like these like super like beautiful, like just wonderful, like wonderfully written, or like wonderfully, yeah, I guess wonderfully written slash designed games. And they have an itch.io, and it's Lintropy, Linhtropy. And there's like one of the games is like this sort of loose retelling of the Vietnamese origin like myth, which is really cool. Right, and so it's games like that where yeah, it's just really latching on right to video games storytelling capacity, right? Or I think of like there's a lot of games now, many more games than previously that are like how that do have sort of explicitly like political tied to real world politics content in them, right? I think of like there's like Democracy Simulator, Civ, right? Civ is really really popular, and these are like big. These are like Civ is obviously like a pretty big game, but there's like Suzerain, I think is it's at least a smaller studio, I think, that makes that. And there's like a lot of people who make indie games that are kind of inspired right by like different like historical eras, maybe ones that are less represented in mainstream games. For example, I think that's been really interesting to see. Um, yeah, just all of these like really lovely like little or long games that either touch on like events that are not paid attention to as much, or populations that are not paid attention to as much. Right? There's a lot of like queer folks who make some wonderful indie games.
I think bringing up kind of that dichotomy between AAA studios, the big names of gaming, and the indie scene is a really good opportunity here to kind of look at what the indie scene is doing in terms of elevating the medium to a really like human experience. Because you can look at something like, Ubisoft, the studio Ubisoft, which is dealing with their own slate of sexual harassment allegations and issues, widespread, who they insist every time they release a game that their games are not political. They put out a title a couple of years ago called The Division, about the United States suffering a governmental collapse after a pandemic shuts down society for several years. They want to say this isn't a political game. It's not a political game. The enemies in the game are the poor people of New York who have, banded together in various factions to try to survive. And then we look at indie games that are engaging really, wholeheartedly with their content. I think a lot of people know about Minecraft. Minecraft is a worldwide phenomenon, but the ways that people have iterated upon that formula of kind of coming together in this shared world to create something. There's a title called Eco that I think is an incredibly cool project that I discovered early on in the pandemic that is very, very similar to Minecraft, but it introduces climate change. And the kind of goal of the game or I guess in the case of it's not climate change, it's a meteor coming, but it's a stand-in for climate change. And the goal is if in 30 real life days you've not worked together with your friends to stop this problem before it gets to you, you've lost everything you've put together. And I think that's a really cool way to teach those lessons to people. There's a game that I connected with really personally at the beginning of the pandemic called Grease, GRIS. Beautiful.
I played Grease.
Yes.
Oh, I love that game.
It's genuinely sad, but also like healing. It's a really healing experience about being confronted with, unspeakable grief and loss, and then finding a way to pick up the pieces of your life and put it back together afterwards. And it's really, really beautiful. And to see those things.
We're not advertising for games here, but I would pitch it.
No, I mean, it's good. The indie scene is really leaning into those experiences.
Right. And I think especially with games that like emphasize like mental health and like healing is like really interesting, because like you're not trying to like win or kill enemies or like conquer, it's like it's like a journey within. And I think getting people to like remember that PS 4 game. Was it called Journey? Was that the one? Yeah. I didn't play myself. I saw streams of people just you can't communicate with words, right? You just have to like instinctively just follow the crowd and it's I would look it up on YouTube. This is great. But it's just like different ways of like collaborating with people you can't see or talk to, and it's just such a unique way of looking at the world. Um, I I wanted to leave some time to talk about the potential for. So let's say you're a political organizer, you're an activist, you're also a gamer, and you're watching this and like, yeah, I want to bring this back to my campaign or my nonprofit or my organization. What's some of the main tips or things that we should be thinking about so we can kind of merge these two industries?
I think
And I'll start with
anyone.
yeah,
I think
go ahead.
anyone
Yeah,
who is doing work with like young people should probably take video games a little more seriously, right? Instead of like attempting to do like a weird half-hearted Pokemon go to the polls, like maybe actually do it like a do that full-heartedly, right? And sort of like more more seriously. I think yeah, people who do work with like young people, right, or people who are trying to organize college campuses, right, or attempting to connect with college students, I think also have a really good opportunity here. It is one thing to meet with your college Democrats, right? Have like a meet and greet with the college Democrats, get like a photo op. I think it is another thing, but there are also people who are probably already going to like vote for you or volunteer for you anyway, right? Um,
hmm
and so it might also be a good opportunity to show up to these spaces that are kind of like seen as like these like neglected spaces, these impenetrable spaces, right? These spaces that like can't become political for some reason, even though they already inherently are just by us being human. And like there's like UC Irvine, I know, has a really strong esports program, for example, right? And there's plenty of college campuses that even just have like maybe not esports clubs, but like gaming clubs, right, more casually, um, who have student populations who would be excited, right, to have
yeah,
someone or to have organizations um, interact with them through mediums that they are already engaged with.
yeah. This reminds me of something. Like I know this conversation was for video gaming, but I'm also a fan of tabletop and card games. Like and I remember I was hanging out at this card shop like a few years ago, like late in the late hour, talking to the owner, and he was telling me that like, yeah, the kids that come here, the high schoolers that come here for like sanctuary, it's like their refuge. They're here, so they're not in the streets. And I'm like, what? Like I didn't think about that. I'm just here to buy some more, packs and stuff, right? But it was like an interesting thing, like everything, like every space that we're not in, people are there for some reason. They're finding refuge, they're finding community, they're finding some type of purpose and joy. And I think for organizers, we got to tap into that and become those people too, in a way. It doesn't have to be gaming. It could be like music, it could be other cultural mediums, but it's just something that I know that like we need to be more creative and approach that. Ian, I
Especially
wanted to
because
leave
if
it to
we
you
don't, then
on this.
other people do.
Yes, because yes, we can't see that space. Go on, Ian.
Sorry, are we still talking about like the different strategies and
Yeah. I just want to see what are your top lines. So like, okay, you're talking to like you bring it back to your nonprofit, bring it back to your advocacy spaces. Like, what are we telling people that we should be building programming towards or fundraising towards, or how do we engage in these spaces in a like a non-transactional way, like a more authentic being, to actually learn these issues and
yeah, I think you know similar to what Mai said, and actually, Mai, it's funny that you said like Pokemon Go to the polls because my work it is a Pokestop in Pokemon Go, so like I definitely do like get my daily like swipe and get the items. But anyway, that's beside the point. Um, uh, yeah, I think it is an opportunity, especially for organizations that might have difficulty reaching out to younger people, right? Like for example, at my work in Los Angeles, our primary base is middle-aged elderly immigrant workers. So might not necessarily be the biggest gamers, but you never know, right? Like there could be like a untapped like potential there. Like they could be casual, very casual, like if they play Wii Sports or something, right, on the
Some
Wii.
intergenerational
In a
connections
generational
perhaps going
potential.
on there.
Exactly. I think like in organizing when we're making those connections, right? if we find that someone is is a gamer, right? I think it's a natural way to especially if you are yourself a gamer, it's a natural way for us to make that connection, right? Let's say, hey, let's go play a couple rounds of League, or let's go watch a Twitch stream or something and hang out there or something, right? That could be a way to do like a one-on-one, right? If you're trying to organize someone in particular to be a volunteer, to come in, to be interested in their events. I definitely would like that type of experience one day. I've never actually done that in terms of like gaming, but I have met a couple of people that I've gamed with before that you know are like within at least our network. So I think there's potential there. Um, Ultimately, yeah, it's just I don't know what it would be like to like invest in like a structure, like have like like it'd be so weird, but like super cool to have like like office like elected offices have like a like a rig somewhere for like people to game or something, but I don't know if that's possible, or like nonprofits to have like a gaming corner or something. I don't know. I don't
It
know.
sounds it sounds cool. That seems like a great idea. If like a campaign office or like a group had like a streaming setup, like a podcast space or like a multimedia space that like can attract people like, hey, come hang out and like, maybe do a phone bank, and we'll host like an
And
esports tournament.
yeah, and honestly, like platforms like Twitch, right, or other
Mhm.
streaming platforms could be like are like a platform for fundraising, right? Like, I mean, that's such an untapped. Like
Mhm.
everyone says, oh, sub to me, give me your sub or something. But like, you could also use that to like actually like just do fundraising instead. I don't know what the legality is in terms of that. There might be some nuance there, but that could be a potential too, right? Like you stream, something similar to what AOC did, or like, just it could even be
Yeah.
like just
I
chatting,
think
something like that.
Yeah, I think the way you do it now is like you have a link in your you can't directly get donations to Twitch, but like you can have links in your like a link tree and
Mm.
then tell people that okay, you have an act blue there or your fundraising accounts there too. But I think it's how you approach the medium and you don't just extract from it. You have to get back to it. You have to engage in the chat.
You
You
can't
have
do
to like
like the
roll
I
with the
showed up for
punches.
like a photo op, but like
Mm.
digitally, right? You can't just
People
be
do that.
like, you
People
can't
do
you can't
that.
just like show up to like the elote man, right? And like take a picture and then leave, right? Like you can't do like the
Yeah,
digital version of that.
I look at
yeah.
it as kind of a shared language. If there's any next gen or Obama alumni viewing, you'll know what I talk about if I say story of self. And I was taught that as an organizing tool, as a way to, find some common ground with people who I know nothing about, who I've never interacted with before, who maybe we've had, especially speaking as like a straight white male, may have had radically different experiences in our lives. My lived experience is not yours or yours. And that's not to say there may not be commonalities there, but they're not the same. And so how do you find that common ground to start those hard organizing conversations around, a controversial issue, or even just an ask like, are you registered to vote? Uh, and when we look at things like games, like I can talk to, I can meet Tim yesterday, and we have a common thing to engage on and talk about.
Yeah.
Or I can sit down with a
I'm
person
playing
who
Halo
doesn't,
right now.
literally, I can sit down with a person who doesn't speak the same language as me, but if they've been taught chess, we can play chess together and we can communicate
Yeah.
those ideas and those concepts together. And so
Right.
I look at those spaces as opportunities where, especially if you're in the organizing space and you're a gamer, these are people that you have a shared language with already. You have a way to use those common experiences as a jumping off point to then get into issues, whether it's, oh, you're playing World of Warcraft and somebody is upset about a balance change, and they go to get a petition going on the forum, right, to say, hey,
Mhm.
change my mage back to do this much damage instead of that much damage. Or in Minecraft, wherever you're engaging with other people, it's when you have that kind of basis of trust, it makes it so much easier, I think, to have those conversations than about a social issue, or to
Mhm.
translate, hey, this is like that. Um, and there's that old adage I like to refer to: if you don't talk to them, someone else will. That's kind of how I think that's a way that we need to look at it more, as opposed to this kind of lawless territory where the more extremist ideologies just have free reign uncontested.
Yeah,
Mhm.
especially because that's just like not true in the sense that people often think it is, right? Like there are certainly like these are like dominant or like, common ideas, right, that are dangerous and that are circulating and easy to circulate in all these spaces. But it's because of oftentimes a lack of presence, right? Or like just the fact that like that lack of presence of people who are more progressive minded. And oftentimes it's because like people just don't know any better, right? And if these are like for young people especially, right, if these are their like spheres where they are being socialized, right, and they just don't know any better, and they're only receiving like content or like talking to people who have only one particular view, right, then they're only going to understand it from that perspective, and also and interact with games in a particular way, and like anything else, right, like being on the internet anywhere else or like interacting with anything else in your life, that just becomes entrenched, right? And yeah, like if we don't actually engage in these spaces, I think it becomes more dangerous, right? And particularly just because like I think like it's kind of like absurd that we don't in a lot of ways. When I think of like the fact that Animal Crossing has spurred like dozens and dozens and dozens of like posts, news, like opinion pieces, and so on, talking about capitalism and housing, right? Things like that at work. So like I think of like World of Warcraft, where there's oftentimes like discussions amongst people who are like thinking about like the story in the game and trying to discuss like and debate like the justifications for like various like actions that different like military leaders take in the game, right? Things like that, right? That are like actually like explicitly political, like those are like political discussions, right? And for some reason, like we as a society are led to believe that like gaming is just like Logan said, it's like this lawless like land where it's impenetrable and it's just a bunch of like people who will never know anything about politics ever when actually they are already talking about it. Oh, someone was asking about the game. Oh, the game I mentioned earlier is it's a game. So it's not about the Vietnam War. It's about the Vietnamese creation myth, and it's called "Gone Wrong, Don't Ban," which is the Vietnamese phrase for it means like children of dragons and fairies, and that's like derived from the origin myth. But it's by it's by someone who goes by the like username tag Lintropy, Linhtropy. Let me see if I don't know if I can like if Tim, if you have the ability to relay that somehow.
I don't know if they're still watching or not, but yeah,
Okay.
we'll have to find it. Lintropy, cool. Okay, I'll type in the chat. Okay. We got a few minutes left. I just want to, Logan, did you give your top lines yet on your advice? Did we already get that? Oh, did you already get to explain like what your thoughts are on like what advice you would give to campaigns and organizations and things like that?
Yeah, I think sure. To put it really, really shortly, and I think this is applicable whether you're on the campaign side or if you're a staffer for an elected official. Your boss doesn't blink an eye if you go to them and say like, let's do a hike with our constituents. Let's do coffee with the congressman. Those are all viewed as reasonable ways to engage with people. I very much think people need to look at things like using AOC as an example. At the peak, height of COVID pandemic Among Us craze. Look at these digital spaces too. Whether you're inviting people that you already engage with in the real world into a digital space to engage, to interact or have conversations together or just have fun together, whether you are or if you're going into those spaces for the purpose of having conversations with the people already there, whether you're doing Twitch streams, Twitch stream Q&As as a congressional candidate, and the core piece of advice to any of these kind of endeavors, if you were to go after them, is you have to be authentic. And that doesn't mean you have to be an expert on video games. You don't have to be good at video games. You don't have to know what you're doing. You just have to, but you do have to engage honestly and in good faith, because nobody likes to be kind of, shilled to. Nobody likes that. But when people see that you have a willingness to kind of engage where they're at, I think that that's a way to, really expand on how we bring people in.
Yeah, and this is obviously not just true with gaming. This is true with all types of organizing of all cultural mediums. We see a lot of performative activism and campaign, like, oh, I'm just here for my photo op, just so I look like I'm in the press doing what I need to do. But people see through it, right? And I think the bar for authenticity has been raised because of newcomers, younger millennial politicians bringing their mediums with them into the political space and in a way legitimizing it. It doesn't hurt that AOC is like what, like a silver? What's her ranking in the league?
Oh yeah,
You know,
she's a I think she's like silver in League of Legends, but like it doesn't even have to be like a game like League of Legends, though, right? It can be like playing any like a Jackbox game, right? Where it's like literally just a party game made digital, right? Like it doesn't have to be like a video game like League of Legends or Pokemon or something. It can be like games that are that are ones that we are used to, or like types that we are used to like tangibly, right, interacting with, that have been translated into the digital space, which are more accessible.
And at a time right now, I think where gaming is more accessible than it's ever been, in terms of cost, technology, whether it's mobile phones or whatever, and more people are able to access those digital spaces, that's a way for you to engage with people as a candidate or an elected official that maybe otherwise couldn't. And we saw that with Zoom during the pandemic and the attempts by states like California to pass legislation to keep, digital attendance an option for government. More people, people that are typically disenfranchised from the process or don't get to have a one-on-one conversation, with a senator or a congressional candidate or their city council member, were able to do that. And so it's a way to kind of, I don't know if democratize is the right word, but expand your accessibility, the accessibility of your movement.
If there are any game devs
I think one very
sorry, real quick. If there are any devs watching, y'all should make a game called Community Organizer Simulator or Campaign Staffer Simulator. Make a simulator game so that folks can get politicized while they play the game. That's like the idea. I'm throwing it out there.
Pizza will be the main economy in this game. You collect slices of pizza at phone banks and
Keurig pods.
Exactly.
Yeah. That would be pretty funny. Like how if we all sat together and designed like an RPG, like tutorial phase, that'd be pretty interesting. My suggestion to campaigns and organizing groups is that I'm a big fan of Discord. It's actually how I met Amy Pritchard actually last year at Roots Camp, because we were on a Discord call together and I taught her how to use it and we just became friends over that. And I feel like campaigns and organizations, like, they shouldn't encourage it, but they should make it easier for their staffers to relax and like bond with each other through these new mediums where like you don't have to feel pressure to be on all the time. I think it's great that there's a stronger emphasis on self-care and personal sustainability in our organizing work. I'm seeing a lot of wellness. I'm seeing a lot of attempts to really make sure that we're healing and we're feeling at our best in this work in our off hours, so that we can come back to it with the energy. And I know that I get refreshed when I'm on Discord just chatting with my buddies at night. We're not always gaming, we're just like hanging out. Sometimes I'm watching them play, I'm just listening in as I'm doing my own work and stuff. And it's like a socialization space for me to stay in touch with people from like very far distances. And what better tool to organize, right?
My roommate ran a congressional campaign last cycle, and they did weekly Among Us night for the campaign staffers. And it was such a hit that they ended up, I think by the end of the cycle, they had staffers from like 6 different campaigns that were coming on every night to just come together and unwind.
Yeah. If you're watching this video, and you're interested in a community Discord of progressive activists, I've talked about this with each of you individually. I'm like, is there enough people that want to do this? Because then we'll all take turns, learning. I feel like campaign Discords fail because campaigns end over time, and so people move on and stuff. So it needs to be housed at some place that's like not just like a one candidate shop. But yeah, food for thought.
Really
I want to
does.
see people be creative with this. And so, okay, we're approaching the last 10 minutes of this call. Want to leave room for questions. Let me check the chat and see if there's anything going on there. Yeah, so you got any questions for us? Please, just engage, and we'll definitely try to answer whatever you can. But in terms of anything that let me check the spreadsheet. Oh, we didn't get to talk about the Asian alt-right stuff. Oh, okay, next panel. Oh, and yeah, and Ma, you had to tell. You wrote this article recently. I wanted you to talk about it.
Okay, it's not an article, Tim. It's a tweet that I made longer in a Substack.
That's as good. That's good writing in the modern age.
So for context, I started a Substack because I wanted to put some of the things that I make in like a more like coherent spot, and not just I've been like tweeting about some of the like I guess like some like extra tidbits that I've been thinking of in relation to the Activision Blizzard situation, but also more generally, like I often have like similar reactions to these things. So I mean, like, just like I guess I don't know what exactly you mean, Tim. I talk about it, but like I was looking at the FEC like numbers for ABK employees, and basically like unsurprisingly, like at every other company, it's like the chief like the executive officers like all have donation behavior that is like extremely extremely different from like all the other employees, right? Like most of ABK's employees make small dollar donations through ActBlue. And through like the last cycle, the plurality of them were to Bernie Sanders. Right. So it's like stuff like that where like, it's yeah, just going back to the thing of like the gaming industry and gamers, right? Both of these two distinct but overlapping populations look a lot different than people tend to think.
Yeah, we'll definitely share that in the chat. Let me go and see if I can find it and make sure that people read that. Any last thoughts from you, Ian?
Yeah, I think like it will just become more and more relevant as like our generation and younger generations get older, right? Because we've already talked about how like it's become ubiquitous in our culture to be a gamer, or at least be adjacent to gaming. So we keep saying like now is the time to get into it, or now is the time to content. I think it is true, like because if not, we're going to end up losing that. And I don't, and it's not just like thinking about it in terms of winning or losing. I think it's just like also like how do we get our message across, how do we get our values across, right? um and shifting culture uh to our progressive values. So yeah, I personally hope to continue gaming as long as I'm able to, right? And if not, being able to experience it through uh those my friends, family, loved ones, right? But yeah, it really is I think gaming has had such an impact, I think, on all of us, right? And and I don't know, I don't see it going anyway anytime soon. I just hope that like we can continue, we can move beyond like just like the capitalist notion of like making profit for our games, but also returning back to like why games were so fun in the first place, right? They made you feel like what Logan was saying. They made you feel something. They made you, like have like this agency in it, not just like as an escape from reality, but also like a way to just unwind and appreciate art.
Yes, definitely appreciate that. Logan, one last word? Oh, you're muted, I think. Are you muted?
I think just to echo kind of what Ian said, I grew up playing, Blizzard games in the 90s. My dad had ALS, and it was a way to connect and share experiences with him when, he couldn't be up and out and about anymore. We could sit at the same desk and play a game together. growing up, I was not a very social kid. My friends lived around the world because I met them on the internet through video games, and it let me have people that to this day are still some of my closest best friends. To learn about places and people and cultures and things I otherwise never would have, to connect with people that even 20, 30 years ago, it would be unthinkable to your best friend who you talk to every day lives 3,000 miles away. And I think that's special. Like, that counts for something. And I don't want to see that hobby or that industry or that form of art fall prey to what we've seen in other parts of culture. And conservatives especially like to talk about the culture wars, or they like to say liberals won the culture war or whatever. It's like, no, like, there are people in their places, and like, don't let the wrong people take those places from us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. One of the lessons I learned from this panel and this whole year of discussion, I've done a lot of panels and workshops with Repower. They're formerly Wellstone, and I remember one of the core lessons they taught me was like how culture is organizing, and if we see that territory and we're not connecting people to where they're at in whatever spaces they're in, then our messaging is going to fall flat. And if we're only using field like metrics and like door knocks to like talk to people and not art, music, games, whatever else is out there, we're not going to tap into the emotional aspects that really give people hope and inspiration. And then once people feel that way, then maybe they can believe in other things such as single payer healthcare, Green New Deal, so I want to give you the last word because you put this together and close this out.
Oh gosh, I don't even know. I think Ian and Logan and you, Tim, put it really, sort of wrapped us up really well. Yeah, I think, I don't know if I have anything else to add. I think you guys did a good job of wrapping it up. My only thing to add is just to go back to the beginning of this conversation, which is if you are interested in supporting like game devs right now in their struggles, it's not just Activision Blizzard, but I'll look at. So Tim put the link to the ABK Strike Fund in the stream video. There are also, I know workers at Ubisoft have been organizing. There's a couple others, I'm sure, like, if you go on these particular, like at a better ABK on Twitter, like, you can find a lot of the other, like, sort of groups of gaming industry workers who are organizing in other studios and across the industry, and also like groups of people who are sort of organizing within both the gaming industry and then also like within the like gaming like community.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Well, thank you all, the three of you, for being here on this Friday afternoon. I will see you on Discord at some point tonight, this weekend, next weekend, to take care. I gotta learn how to play WoW and League of Legends eventually. I'm a Dota scrub, but be interested in learning with y'all. And to anyone else watching, if this got you thinking, please add us on social and DM us. Maybe we'll set something up. Let's not wait for campaigns and orgs to do what we want to do, right? So definitely excited to embrace our identities here. So with that, have a good night, and we're gonna have a happy hour. And this is a good transition actually. Our happy hour that I'm hosting in a few minutes is hosted on a platform called Gather.town, where you basically build an 8-bit avatar of yourself, and you walk around like a big giant tavern, and you just like talk to people, and the video pops up when you're next to someone. You can play like mini games. There's code names in there. I'm gonna connect my Twitch stream there, and so I'm gonna do some music and just play for people as they walk around and pretend like it's a party. So that to me is cool. I want to see how people react to it. So hopefully, I don't know, maybe it'll work. But with that, gonna call it a night. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you for day 2 tomorrow. Peace out.